Helmets are unfortunately a very controversial issue in the cycling community. I don't think they should be controversial. Certainly they can help limit the damage when you sustain head trauma while riding a bike, but they're not required by law in most U.S. jurisdictions, at least not for adults. And, the people who insist that everyone wear a helmet are really making the problems of cyclists worse and discouraging cycling more than they're promoting cycling safety. Let's talk a little bit about how that happens. First of all, what you've got is people who are insisting that safety is on the cyclist, okay? Well, if you look at jurisdictions like Amsterdam or others that have rather high cycling rates as a share of modal transportation, 20, 25, 30% cycling share as a mode of transportation, what you find is that most of the people do not wear helmets and they're safe. It's because there's safe infrastructure and because there's safety in numbers and because there's so much cycling going on in those societies that the drivers oftentimes have experiences of their own riding about on bicycles in traffic. And so they know to be safe and respectful. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the very last resort in cyclist safety, not plan A, B, or C, but plan Z of cycling safety is making sure everyone has a helmet on. So if they get hit, they won't die or have a life-changing brain injury. Plan A is making sure that cyclists have safe infrastructure to ride in. Plan B is teaching motorists to respect cyclists' rights. Plan C is sensitizing cyclists and motorists to the dangers of traffic interactions and getting them to handle them more safely, civilly, and mindfully. There are so many things you can do to promote safety besides insisting that cyclists have to protect their head with a helmet. And it tends to discourage cycling because, obviously there's just the hassle. That's a factor. Hassle counts and has to be taken account of in public policy. I forgot my helmet when I was out riding today, but I didn't go back to get it because I didn't have time. I'm riding around without a helmet, as New York City law allows me to do as a adult. And the sky is not falling, and I haven't fallen either, and I haven't hurt my head, and it's extremely unlikely I'll do so because I'm an experienced cyclist. I'm going to avoid the situations where a head injury would be likely. If you want to move me into a different context, think about a country where it would cost a lot of income compared to what people make to buy a helmet. That's going to be an expense that could put you over the brink and you can't afford to bicycle at all. Maybe you're saving up money for weeks, months, or years to buy a bicycle. And then, oh no, but you can't bicycle without a helmet because someone might hit you if you go out there and bicycle. So bicycling is some of the lowest cost transportation that there is out there, as it runs on people's individual power. You don't need gas or any other expensive arrangements or supports for cycling. So why add to the expense of cycling when one of its great virtues is that it's accessible and inexpensive by saying you have to wear this specialized safety gear that doesn't really play any role in any other context because we can't be bothered to teach the motorists not to hit you and we can't be bothered to build safe bike infrastructure. Let's focus on the approaches to bike safety that actually keep cyclists safe. There's also a whole bunch of arguments out there about whether the medicine really supports that, wearing helmets reduces the severity of head injury or deaths with people riding a bike. And I have to say there is a point there. I have had a number of very tragic cases where cyclists were killed by motorists by having their heads crushed. But those cyclists were all wearing helmets. They happen to be wearing helmets. If a motor vehicle runs over your head, helmeted or not, you're gone. And that happens far too often here in New York City and throughout the United States. And requiring everyone to wear a helmet is not the solution to that problem, quite obviously. So let's focus on what we can do, where our efforts really do move the needle to make cyclists more safe, and stop insisting on knowing whether the latest cyclist killed in traffic was wearing a helmet, which is what I always hear every time I'm representing a family in a wrongful death case of a cyclist who was killed. Oh, well, were they wearing a helmet? It's just absolutely horrible, but all of the people involved in those fatal crashes died because of head trauma, and all of them that I can think of were helmeted, and it would not have made one bit of difference. I'm sure there are cases in which a helmet would have made a difference in the severity of a head injury. I think I've handled a few, but I also have had cases of people who sustained serious traumatic brain injury from a helmeted fall from their bike when they were going at low speed, sometimes falling on a road defect. Again, it's not the way to make cyclists more safe. The marginal safety benefits of mandatory helmet laws are marginal at best. When used as an excuse to blame the victim, they're pernicious at their worst. Let's get off the whole helmet obsession, the whole helmet shaming phenomenon. Let's get out and ride.